Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hunting for Silver Linings. Today is Friday, March 12th, over here in the Great Lakes region of the United States. I am the chapter director of Grand Rapids, Michigan for Startup Grind. My name is Corey, and joined for the second time. Great to check in with one of our esteemed chapter directors. We have Rafat over there in Gaza. Hi, hello.
Hi, Corey. Nice to be here again.
Yeah, I'm really excited to reconnect and see what's happened in these past months since we first got to know one another. But maybe for the benefit of those who didn't take the time to listen to our previous conversation, just a quick little recap on your background, who you are.
Sure. Thanks again for having me. So my name is Rafat Abushaban. I'm the chapter director of Startup Grind in Palestine for Gaza chapter. I'm also in the advisory board for the South by Southwest upcoming startup pitch, upcoming actually in the next couple of days, and also the founder of a platform for entrepreneurs called Rival.com, basically offering resources and support for entrepreneurs in emerging markets.
And it sounds like you've maybe gotten busier since we spoke last.
Indeed, getting busier and busier. You know, with the COVID pandemic and everything going virtually online, a lot of people have lost their jobs, sadly, and a lot of their livelihoods. But also at the same time, the internet has made it possible for a lot of opportunities, connect remotely and be able to take initiative and do your business remotely. So that's what myself, among multiple friends, have been trying to be doing, taking the benefit of the problem that we have, the COVID, towards actually providing something inspiring for the people.
And I think in the earlier part of the pandemic, and especially when you and I first spoke, we were hoping that was going to be the case. We were hoping that that while it's the great tragedy and great loss for a lot of people, collectively and globally, it could be it lead more access or reduced barriers to access for work. Unfortunately, you have to have at least have to have an internet connection in order to enjoy that. But even the need for that and the acceleration of that trend has we've seen that accelerated. So anyway, you mentioned that in a couple of days we've got some pretty cool stuff going on. We have South by Southwest. That's a really great fun festival here in the U.S. That has gone virtual. How are you involved, and how do we plug in?
Sure. So just I'd like to start by saying I'm no official spokesperson for the South by Southwest. I'm just judging. I was judging the applications and helping in my capacity to select startups. But I can say a few words on the events itself. So basically, the event is one of the spearhead events in the entertainment industry, film industry, and also for entrepreneurs in the startup ecosystem worldwide. Actually, it has been going for so long. So every year it's around like March of every year. It takes place in Austin, and it's like a physical conference that people come in. For the startup side of it, it's like a competition between startups that get selected in order to get pitching in front of VCs so that they can actually pitch for like a Series B, Series C, and in some cases even Series A funding. So this year with the pandemic, last year actually the event was differentiated, and with the COVID upon us, like all the physical activities were canceled. But this year it's going all in virtual. So a lot of people, especially internationally, that weren't able actually beforehand to be able to join the benefits of such events and conferences are actually taking place. And the event should take place in a couple of days actually. So as I've said, it's a multiple of it has a multitude of components related from entertainment to industry, including emerging technologies, mixed reality, VR, and XR. And the startup event is also embedded within it. We have, I believe, in 5 or 6 categories, startups pitching in front of investors in order to get funding for that.
And How did you first get connected and with South by and your involvement?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting and an interesting story. And it's not really a story, but it goes back to the introduction that you were just saying and we were discussing. It's really the power of online connections. So personally, I mean, I've been out and about across the region, but my interconnection with the South by Southwest was really virtual. So I was in touch with Chris Valentine from the committees there, and he actually pitched me in with a couple of guys. We got connected since 2018, and since then, I've been an ongoing advisory board member for their pitch event. Prior to that, I have been coaching and judging applications for startups in numerous locations and for different startup categories. So that has given me the knowledge and the exposure to get to the to Chris and to the South by Southwest panel. But later on, I could say it's all like virtual empowered. So this is why I was saying that this medium that we have is a blessing in these times, because if you really can utilize it in your own benefit, your community's benefit, and others' benefits, you could easily do things that you can't do otherwise in physically.
Yeah, I think like South by Southwest is also of all of the global conferences around like multidisciplinary. So it's like, South by is about arts, it's about tech, it's about work. I didn't realize how influential it can be as far as putting ecosystems on the map. So if you want to build global awareness for what you're doing in your local region, especially emerging markets, like it's a great spot to like plug into, and South by wants that kind of involvement. It's got an incredible vibe. I know for us here in Michigan, we for the last few years, we when it's in person, we rent a house and we call it the Michigan House, and we take a bunch of our larger corporations. One of the largest is called Whirlpool, and that's a company that makes like washing machines and dishwashers, etc., refrigerators. But it's a Michigan company, and they help sponsor the event. We rent a house. I think 1 year it was next to LinkedIn, so there was like the LinkedIn House and there was the Michigan House, and we bring bands and we have like photographers, and it's a way to introduce people like, hey, Michigan's a cool place to be. Like, why don't you start your business here? So really important for ecosystem builders to take part in these kinds of organizations. It's why I joined Startup Grind, to let the world know, like, hey, Grand Rapids ain't so bad. So so it's really that's awesome. So you mentioned that you do a lot of this mentoring of startups and coaching. I'm curious to learn about, like, have you seen any kind of like shift in mindset, or the types of questions or the quality of work in this last year?
Sure. I mean, just following up on your last comment, I'd like to connect it to this question as well. So, I mean, it's really about building an ecosystem. Like, I could remember like working a few years back with startups in the ecosystem where it wasn't really considered even as an ecosystem. It was scattered. The startups like were all over the place. Everybody who has a great idea thought they had, the next Facebook or Google, regardless of like their passion, which was really something to admire. The resources and the possibility of that happening were like close to nil. So basically having this support of the ecosystem and raising the awareness collectively was one of the most important assets to have for any ecosystem, and the ecosystem that I was involved in, not to mention that. So going back to what you were saying about Michigan, I've read a book about startup communities, like, the experience of having like the Boulder startup ecosystem, and how the Silicon Valley movement could move from like Silicon Valley in towards like an international standard that could fit in different places, and have the ecosystem being built around influencers, not only feeders. We could say I was a feeder at one point to the ecosystem, and then by moving and crashing here and there, and actually getting involved in the events and startup weekends, and then of course startup grind and other activities and incubators, you get to become not only a participant but also an influencer. So that happens in Michigan, that happens in Gaza, that happens in the MENA region, that happens all over the world, where there's will and there's a critical mass of people who are collectively interested in having this kind of movement towards the uprising of the community. Here, within the ecosystem that I've been working in, and I've been working with multiple startups basically from the MENA region, not only in Palestine, but in the MENA region and beyond. I would say that maybe it's similar to what we spoke of last time, but there's a slight difference of everybody's going online. Even all brick and mortar stores are going online. Even small startups that had very local based delivery services are going online. So everybody's just going online and trying also to widen their reach, because they're saying there's, I think these days, an undenied fact that people believe, which I think is worth a little bit of thought. Everybody's believing that the shift from the physical towards the virtual will lose them a lot of customers in that process, customers who were they used to work with, and they used to work in a certain manner, and they used to deliver in a certain way. So losing these customers and moving towards the virtual, they have to build up a new community if they didn't have any presence online. Of course, for other startups that already had an influence online, they could easily make this gap. And to some degree, I believe this was correct, because many startups have actually had this difficulty. Many startups have crashed because of the pandemic, not being able to do this shift. Offline operations and physical services to customers towards the online, but others have succeeded. But the issue maybe is that the ones that have succeeded have not limited themselves to becoming a local startup or a local business. Everybody who has gone online in one way or another has become a global startup. Maybe they are targeting a city in a region, and then they find on their Facebook page, or I don't know, Instagram page, somebody from another country reaching out to them and actually seeking their services and willing to pay more than double the amount they're offering to get that service. So it's really maybe embracing the mentality of becoming a global startup, I believe, and getting startups and entrepreneurs to understand this shift, that it's really difficult to stay local these times. It's really important to have a global mindset. So having this international audience is not limiting to your neighborhood, but also limiting to what the internet can provide, and where your imagination can reach, and where your work has to go, and what levels of and what breadth can it move to.
Yeah, we certainly do a lot of these conversations, and we like to focus on the ecosystems and our chapter directors that are in the emerging markets, and investors are doing the same thing. The conversations we're having with the big investors are we have to go hunting for our deal flow like we've never had to go hunt before, and we're finding just amazing innovation in what they say, the surprising, they're so surprised innovation happens everywhere. What?
Right. Right. And just to mention, it's really interesting, because I'll just point out to another thing that I was working on recently, which had a good shift, the platform that I've mentioned, Rival.com, in the emerging markets. We've also, since our talking last time, we had seen quite a big shift towards the English-speaking market. So we were mainly targeting maybe the MENA region, Arabic-speaking market, and we had an English profile page. So we're not only seeing people from emerging markets, we're seeing people from the US come in, we're seeing from people from the UK come in. So that goes also to describe how understanding this global effect, like we were targeting a certain market, and that was our target market and avatar, but our work has gone beyond what beyond our plan to reach out to those markets, and we've actually hit significant numbers that we didn't think that we could hit before online. Like people are finding us more often and engaging with us more often, and that all gives back to the mentality of differentiating markets, emerging markets versus developed markets versus opportunities for investments. And this is something also that goes back to South by Southwest that I could also cover a little bit in more depth later in the talk.
Yeah, I think when we talk, so the U.S., a lot of folks would overlook opportunity in the U.S. in the United States because, oh well, that's like a big economy, and like there's no room, or there's no interest, or there's no need. But because of our systemic inequality, like every town has its own emerging market. Like it's
yes,
like
yes.
About like we have a whole in my city, Grand Rapids, Michigan, we have 3 sections of town, and there's one section of town that has very specifically and intentionally been ignored for 100 years. And so to your point, like the mindset and the needs and the desire of the people that live there, they're very similar to what we would consider an emerging market, right?
Right.
And unfortunately, because of the continued systemic issues, that district is still overlooked, by their neighbors just across the street. So they will likely be able to have better chance of finding products and services that serve their immediate needs outside of their own like economy. So it's interesting that you've seen such growth in that way. So what else did you want to cover?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, also covering in the same vein, maybe one of the things that we've seen with, let me touch a little bit on the South by Southwest application. So I can't name specifics, but I could actually pledge for the operation itself, how it goes. So basically we have like hundreds of applications that as a judging committee, and we have a huge judging committee so that everybody can voice their opinion, and then the collective results of the opinions gets 1 or 2 or 3 startups selected in every sector of like our 5 sectors that we work in. We work like in a health sector, we work in entertainment, and in the future of work, in emerging technologies, and so on. So throughout the years, and I can say for my experience, because I've been working in the same process since 2018, and it's not really a lot of time, but I consider it a significant experience, especially having gone through the COVID pandemic and seeing that shift in the mindset of entrepreneurs and applications. South by Southwest is an international event, and still by far the largest number of applications come from US-based companies and US-based startups, and that's understood. But the thing is that every year on, the number of international applications gets higher, and the quality of international applications get higher. You could easily differentiate between, like, when looking as a judge on applications, like startups say what they do, what's their competitive advantage, and they're asked a few questions by the South by Southwest application form to identify their startup and identify why they should pitch in front of investors. And you could easily find like many entrepreneurs saying, yeah, we just have like secured, I don't know, $1 million in Series A funding, and we want Series B funding. But what will that actually allow you to do? So they don't have any growth or plan for development before that. But in the same time, you find this like, R&D effort that is somewhere in an Indian village maybe, and they're like, the app entrepreneurs are saying that, okay, we don't have funding yet, we're having this product, and they have like maybe multiple videos on YouTube or so to show for it, and then they're like pitching in front of investors a very virgin opportunity that everybody can tap into. And this is what's nice about such competitions, because you can find innovation and actual business opportunities from the most unusual places, and at the same time you could easily be misled, and that happened once again by maybe big names in startups. Like we find like tens, I would say easily tens of startups that come in, and they put everything that they have in their like arsenal in your face, like having Series A funding. We have these kinds of advisory board members in our board, and we have like this size of the market. But in the end of the day, you could see easily from a critical standpoint that they're declining. Their business is no longer today's market. Their business is yesterday. It's definitely not coping up with the COVID pandemic. So it's really interesting, a view from an assessor point of view, and advice in the same vein for entrepreneurs who are actually considering such events and even pitching in front of investors, is that competition today is on a higher par than ever before, because you're not competing with your neighbors, you're not competing with your ecosystem, you're competing globally. And it's very easy to come up with something cheaper than you have, easier than you have, faster than you have. But what you have that nobody has, maybe like as a linchpin or as a niche that you're targeting, is actually what you have offered before and what has worked, and you're actually spirit in the startup. So you can easily spot startups that are actually invested all in and they're like ready to move, versus startups who are like they're outgrown their startup life towards becoming a more traditional company that is going out of shape, and it's easily spotted in between the lines of their pitch. So always be hungry for more, or always have like embrace the startup mentality, always embrace new change and globalize markets, like target new markets. Don't limit yourself to a certain market, even if it's growing fast. Having this flexibility can overcome pandemics like COVID and like others. And today is more proof for the COVID pandemic and the changing market trends than ever before that this is actually true.
Do you think that innovators and entrepreneurs that have, whether or not they survived as far as their business, the pandemic and the shifts because their customers moved or they had to pivot or didn't pivot well, but do you think that the exercise of having been through this last year is going to make innovation and the companies, like people in the practice of innovation and doing business, better and more resilient in the future and in the coming generation?
I think it depends. A lot of organizations, I mean, I do work with traditional organizations that you can say that today's like mantra is everybody is going online, and the call for change is on everybody's tongues and in everybody's manifestos, and that makes innovation, I would say, a commodity. Innovation today is everybody is just saying, yeah, if you're not going online, if you're not using Zoom and online conferencing services, and you're shifting all your systems online, you're not innovative yet. You're slacking behind, and that's true. But in the same time, innovation is not always the solution. Many entrepreneurs who innovate great ideas, and even in the South by Southwest, actually we have like great ideas that are innovations, but they at the end of the day they get no votes because of their either A, lack of feasibility, B, lack of creativity, or even C, lack of realism. Like the ideas are cool to inspire, cool to think about, but they're not cool to actually apply on the ground because maybe the infrastructure is not ready yet, the target market is not ready yet. So maybe sometimes having something called minnovation, that minimum innovation, or just slight change from what we already have, because the pandemic, although it has changed everything maybe in our lives, but everything else has stayed the same. So we do have like the same infrastructure, the same internet connection platforms, the same social media websites, and even the same, social media feeds. So nothing has changed except in the exception of the pandemic. So it's not easy to go change 180 degrees while everything else remains the same. What counts is the smart change rather than the innovation itself. So it's really a word of caution against going to innovation, whatever that innovation might be, but rather to think clearly of what this change can involve for the startups, for the communities, and for even the business leaders who are actually working their way in the current business environment.
That's some really some great input and advice. I never heard the term innovation before. I love that.
Yeah, it's really starting to picking up these days, because a lot of people are, and I recall I used to teach in the university, and at that time, like, everybody was saying, think outside the box, think outside the box. And then there was a movement that's saying thinking is inside the box, outside the box is the most cliche term that you're ever going to use. Please don't use it. So I think these days the same is being said about that, innovation, embracing online. Yes, everybody needs to embrace online, but we need to do it clearly and smartly, understand to balance things out. And this was actually our experience with many of the things that the local startup growing chapter, many of the our online platforms and initiatives that we have been working on the ground. We have learned that the easy way and the hard way sometimes, that it's not easy to innovate always, but it's also smarter to innovate sometimes.
I think it's a really great way to have realistic expectations. Also, sometimes people are so focused on a moonshot that they lose sight of like the traction that's available next week. So
definitely.
Be able to tell us like how are things going now for your chapter and for your flock of entrepreneurs that you're tending to?
Sure. Yeah. Currently, actually, the ecosystem situation in Gaza and in Palestine hasn't really changed much since we last spoke. The pandemic is still impacting the community significantly, mainly maybe because the vaccines are not still like in mass circulation. They're still very, very, very like limited to like certain people, like the medics and the people in front. So it's not like having everybody is open again, and events that the startup ecosystem thrives are not moving as expected. So I think it's a little bit on the hibernation side, the whole ecosystem, I'm saying. Other than that, yes, we do have a lineup of guests, but actually because of the current situations and difficulty in movement, we had to modify the timing of few of our sessions and activities. Maybe post March, we were thinking that we might have actually a couple of events and engage community members more. But rather than that, it's really now most of our work is done online. Like even the coaching, the mentorship is like more on one-on-one basis. So and as I've mentioned, like we get like a mixture of connections. So we get from all around the MENA region and beyond, like connection requests and mentorship requests and working with there and here. So it's really the global mentality that is really, although it's something that we love to do, it's really difficult to cope up with your local ecosystem, which I believe, from my point of view, is something that you really have also always as a priority. Because if your local ecosystem is weak and is not thriving, then you can't really actually pledge advice for other ecosystems unless you know what you're doing for your own ecosystem. So it's really having this balance right, and hopefully in the upcoming few weeks we will be resuming more of our events, following the maybe lift off of a little bit of the lack of movement that we were having here, and hopefully host more events in the coming few months.
Yeah, I think I know I'm in the same position as you are. about a year ago, almost exactly, is when we started doing these check-ins with the directors around the planet, because there's so much work and so much things happening locally already, that I was kind of lost in the noise, especially being a new chapter and a new director. So I looked outside my network. Plus, I also did identify how, like in our small ecosystem, that we have some acute needs that we have to import. So and that's also one of the benefits of having developed this global network, or leaned into what Startup Grind has to offer, is I'm able to now bring resources into our ecosystem that we desperately needed. And yeah, so it's a little bit of both, right? Can we talk
Definitely. I may just add that you are actually doing a great job in it, Corey, and this, no wonder that you were like featured in the Startup Grind Global this year. So for the great work that you're doing, and I think this is something really an inspiration for us all in the Startup Grind family, and even beyond, like maybe people who are like attending to this meeting, just interested about moving around, and about like your idea of actually utilizing a community that you already had at hand, in this manner, to having like every day there's a meeting from here, from all around the planet. So you're having people feeding in from different mentalities and different backgrounds. Is really a unique experience, definitely for you, but more importantly for the community. I'm one of your followers, and really it has been great working with you as a guest and also as a listener, and I believe lots of people feel the same too.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and it's definitely something that I've always said. As a coach, we always do this. It's like let's make sure what you're doing is fun, so that you want to get up and do it. Not everything about what you're doing is going to be fun, because, for example, I don't really enjoy spreadsheets, but
Yeah.
but overall, I get really jazzed. Like, this stuff fills me up. And to your point earlier, we're more than ever a global ecosystem. And we had a talk with Professor Art Markman at the University of Texas, Austin. He's the director of the IC Squared Institute, and his episode is really great about building ecosystems and the need to view it from a regional standpoint. And it's not even necessarily like, and this goes like to what we were talking about before, where it's not necessarily like regional, like physically, but regional as in other ecosystems that are in the same or similar position as you. It's kind of like having a ecosystem that is a mentor, or an ecosystem that is a mentee. Those connections are really valuable, because an ecosystem can't thrive if it's only stuck unto itself, and relying on its own resources. So yeah, thank you. It's been a lot of fun. Now, with a few minutes that we have left here, I want to hear more about Rival and like what you've been doing there. You talked earlier about some growth.
Yeah, indeed. So we did talk a little bit about it last time, but I'll just recap on that. So basically, Rival has launched, it's approaching its third year now. So basically it started out just as a small blog that I used to post on my university lectures and my mentorship sessions. Like, I had these multiple PowerPoint slides and video files that everybody was asking, like a student here and a colleague there. So I was just passing on via email. So I thought, why shouldn't I start a blog on having all these resources available to everybody? So that actually has grown towards being networking with the coaches and entrepreneurs all around the world. Mostly our focus is emerging markets, as I've mentioned. We actually try to send a message to entrepreneurs that we understand that not all ecosystems are the same. We understand that some ecosystems are maybe growing, but more demanding than others. Maybe in my own ecosystem, like there's multiple issues. Maybe we're like having issues in the financial infrastructure. It's very difficult to have like online payments being processed correctly. Maybe we have like issues in the legal ecosystem, actually being able to register and move seamlessly within your application of holding a startup. And that's why many actually entrepreneurs in the emerging markets who want to start a business, they go elsewhere, like they go either to Delaware or someplace in Europe to register their own startup, and that doesn't go towards the GDP of their country, and also that classifies their startup as maybe a US-based startup or a European-based startup or wherever they're like placing it. So it's really these nitty-gritty details, and every country has their own problems with that, but there are common themes that we're trying to cover on. So basically, we target those audiences with our content that we publish regularly, the free online courses that we provide, and C online mentorships that we're like having one-on-one. And it's throughout the pandemic, since the beginning and until now, I think we were like in a great position that we started just before the breakout of COVID, and now we started actually to see momentum, and now having this start ahead in the market, we're like seeing a great impact on different markets. Like we're really growing in the MENA region, especially in Gulf countries, and also, as I've mentioned, seeing more attraction from India and other English, maybe we do like our content on two basic platforms, like Arabic and English. So non-Arabic, I would say English speaking countries also as well. So throughout that journey, what we have learned is something that I would like to share with the community is it's really the idea of having this global ecosystem of entrepreneurs with different mindsets, with different requirements. Everybody is speaking a different business language, but at the end of the day, they all share same, terminologies. They share similar goals of, being able to grow and actually to reach market. Like they have like certain numbers and goals in their mentalities, but at the end of the day, these points that makes them similar and also the points that makes them different is what actually makes them unique to their own ecosystem. And it's really that we have learned the hard way, actually, that many of the startups that are failing today, especially in the emerging markets, are failing because maybe not of the situations and not the infrastructure, but rather the belief from the entrepreneurs that we're like inside an emerging market. It's never going to actually lift off. Everybody else is failing. Why should we succeed? And that makes them give up before it's time. That has been once again the killing factor of many startups that we've worked with. And what I've seen actually with these kind of startups is that they do actually need to work harder than their peer startups in maybe growing markets and markets that has easier access. But if they extend their patience, not 2 months, maybe it may require years, but if they have to have this, a long-term commitment for the startup, it's definitely going to make it. It's definitely going to pay dividends, and it's going to be even more successful because nobody else is according to what they're saying, is succeeding. Since everybody is failing, so succeeding while everybody is failing is really a great job, even though it takes twice the effort or twice the hard work that they're doing. So it's really actually the sign of giving up and pivoting that early on in my coaching days, working with startups and actually being mentored and coached myself, we were taught about this, pivot when you think that the startup is going nowhere. And I believe this is a very good point to understand, but it's also very critical to understand if this pivot is going to lose you a chance that you could move through with your patience and with your team members' support. So pivot when you there's 100% closed door in front of you. But if it's 99% closed and you have 1% chance, what we have seen with emerging markets, at least, is that we should go for the 1%, because this 1% is actually what makes or breaks startups here. And through the few success stories that we've seen around the region, is this 1% that has made the difference in these people's lives, and actually they've created startups that are compared to other startups in the emerging markets are juggernauts. They're dealing with millions of dollars. Of course, different startups could be dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars, but in an emerging market, this is a big deal. So in order to get to that, you have to actually be able to put on the hold, the long commitment, running on a long-term plan to actually not change the business or change its components, but rather be able to pivot throughout the times and change according to what's happening. That goes also back to what I've said, don't innovate like many of entrepreneurs in the emerging markets are trying to innovate, and that's not really needed right now. What they need is actually just get something working maybe in developed markets and make it feasible to emerging markets, and that would be easily a success. Like many online websites do the same, like even Alibaba.com or something like that. It's like a story of having seeing what Amazon does and just copying it for another market, and it's really great success without having to innovate anything. But it's really to understand that the long commitment is, I believe, the number one reason of failures for startups, mainly in the emerging markets and also in developed markets as well.
Yeah, I think I've always really enjoyed helping people celebrate their small successes, right? And that's a way to not get distracted by the fact that things are taking too long or longer than one expected, or like, oh man, that one deal didn't go through. I was really hoping that was going to happen, but finding the small success in there and celebrating that. It's been a challenge for me to do in my own life, certainly, but it definitely helps keep that momentum, or at least get you out of bed again. So
definitely.
So if someone wants to work with you, a startup or an entrepreneur, they want to plug into what's available at Rival, how do they find you?
Yeah, they could easily find us by riable.com or just Google Riable. That's RIABLE. So Riable is basically a blend between two words, like RIA is the Arabic for Riyada, it's is entrepreneurship, and Bill is like, a blend from blend. So it's really the blend and mixture of entrepreneurs from around the world. So it's riable.com. Just Google us, you'll find us on the top results. You could easily get in touch with us, and we'll help you actually realize your startup business models and plans, hopefully.
Awesome. And same question that I ask everybody at the end of the conversation is, what can all of your fellow Startup Grind chapter directors around the planet, what can we do for Rafat? What can we do for Gaza? What can we do for Rival?
It's really as you start off, Corey, and I think it's really important that in such times of difficulty, and especially in the COVID times, that we stick together. And I once again thank you for your work, actually, for your inspiration for the ecosystem. It's really the message of being able to inspire one another. Like I learned from your success, and hopefully you can learn from my experience, and that could also translate to the community as well. But it's also important that we, especially in this time, being able to connect together and really leverage our own networks, really a great thing to provide, because like the emerging markets, maybe I'm working in one of them, their capital is really connections, like connections to businesses and connections to people, influential people in growing markets, in big maybe businesses, or even small startups. But it's really the connections and markets. So I would ask everybody in the startup grind community, and really anybody interested, that don't be closed to opportunities, just be open to get connected with everybody. Just feel free to see the world from others' perspectives. Just be able to maybe see the profiles of, I don't know, freelancers, developers, and even startups from a community that you didn't think before were actually working on something like this. You may be surprised that they're like offering a great service or something that could easily help you for a cheaper price, for a better product, and also help these people in the emerging market. So it's really the networking and moving this forward is really a great thing. And this is something that you've been doing, Corey, and hopefully we're all trying to do it in our own ways. And interconnectivity between the Startup Grind chapters and our other work like Unriable, and also even South by Southwest, which is And by the way, a great chance to network. Like you'll find very big name individuals and startups there. So it's really a great thing to be involved in if you have the chance.
Yeah, and to that point on the South by and participating in events like that, now that we're a year on into this, it's become like more effective and easier to make those connections when you're attending those events. In the beginning, it was just a bunch of like weird Zoom rooms, and it was like being talked at. But now these events are really collaborative. I know our global conference was as such, and some really amazing connections were made at those events. And that's like you're talking about that social capital. There's no better time than to lean in and build some of that at these
Definitely.
So thanks for all the work that you've been doing, Rafat. I really am so grateful for the generosity of your time today. Really great to see you again. And I look forward to connecting in a few months. Please have a great rest of your day and weekend.
Thank you, Corey. Great to be here again, and keep safe, and hopefully we'll meet again soon.
All right. Ciao, my friend.
Take care. Bye-bye.